Perhaps the most potent force fighting and in places defeating the Islamic State group in Syria is a Kurdish militia called by its initials YPG. The militia is based largely in northern and northeastern Syria, and its battlefield successes have led to an alliance of convenience with the United States as its planes bombard ISIS. But the YPG is also allied with Turkish insurgent group known as the PKK, and that has raised alarm bells from the Turkish government, which has long sought to deny the creation of a larger Kurdish state. For more on all this, I'm joined by New York Times correspondent Rukmini Callimachi, who was recently in Syria with the YPG militia. She joins me now from northern Iraq. Rukmini, welcome. You were, as recently as yesterday, embedded with this Syrian Kurdish militia group. Tell us what you saw, how you saw them operating.
Thank you, Judy. I spent almost 2 weeks with the YPG militia, and the first thing that strikes you when you enter northern Syria is just how much territory they now control. They've managed to seize an area that is 3 times the size of Lebanon in northern Syria, a third of that just in the last 3 months, and they are making impressive gains against the Islamic State. What we saw are men and women, they believe in gender parity, wearing uniforms and driving Toyota Hiluxes and vans, speeding towards the front lines. They have not the most sophisticated weapons. They have some dushkas and machine guns, but mainly small arms. And what they are doing is they're hiding behind walls and crouching inside buildings. And mostly they are working hand in glove with the United States and the coalition's war room by locating on GPS on their GPSs the locations of ISIS fighters. And once they call them in, within minutes and usually within 20 to 30 to an hour, warplanes come screening in and drop Hellfire missiles and other ordnance on the positions of ISIS fighters, and the destruction is quite immense.
In essence, they're doing work that no one else is doing over there in coordinating with the U.S. and the allies. But the Turkish government, as we said, is concerned about what they're doing. Why? Explain the background there.
It's a very puzzling situation. The Kurds have now taken an area that is directly underneath Turkey in northern Syria. Turkey has battled its own Kurdish insurgency in Turkey since really the 1980s. The group there is called the PKK. And what is evident when you go to Syria is that the militia that is now working with the United States is really just a sister organization, even an extension of the PKK. We interviewed numerous commanders that are wearing, YPG uniforms, but after speaking to them, in greater detail, we understood that they had actually come directly from PKK camps. So to Turkey, the idea of the Kurds having their own autonomous region is, I think, more of an existential threat than even ISIS. And so we now have this very complicated triangulation where you have the YPG in northern Syria working with the United States and the coalition, actively fighting ISIS and succeeding and really making significant gains against them. And at the same time, you have Turkey, which just opened fire on the PKK, their sister group, in Iraq and Turkey.
And meanwhile, the United States has to walk this very fine line. How does the U.S., from your perspective, how is it doing at threading this needle between being supportive of Turkey, which it needs to carry out this fight, and meanwhile not alienating and working with these, as you say, Syrian Kurdish militias who are in some regards the sworn enemy, at least Turkey thinks so, of the Turkish government, its Turkish majority?
That's exactly what it is, Judy. And I mean, I can just give you the example of the trouble I went through to just try to get a statement from the United States. I went first to the State Department and later to the Pentagon. I kept on being batted between different spokespeople. And I just wanted them to answer the simple question: is it the case that the United States is taking GPS coordinates from the YPG militia in Syria and using those coordinates to strike ISIS targets? And after days and days, of effort, I finally got this kind of washed out response from the Pentagon spokesperson that said the United States is working with a number of actors in northern Syria, including a Syrian Kurdish militia, etc. So they refuse to name the YPG in their statements to reporters, and I think that's indicative of the problematic situation that the West finds itself in.
So as a reporter who's been on the ground there, how do these fighters, how do they observe the dilemma that the U.S. is in, and how worried are they about the Turkish government not only not supporting them, but coming after their compatriots?
I think they're very confused. They see themselves as the natural ally of the United States in this fight. And in many ways, culturally, I think they are. The YPG adheres to Abdullah Öcalan's philosophy. And among the tenets of his philosophy is strict gender parity. So wherever I went in all of their military offices, there was always a woman commander and a male commander. And in many of the instances, it was the female commander who had the more senior operational role. The battle in Hasaka, which is the most fierce battle that has been fought these last couple of weeks in the province of Hasaka, was led by a female commander. So they point out these things and say, look, we're in a region of the world where, in general, women are treated as subservient beings and second-class citizens, and we have a philosophy of being that involves gender equality. We are against terrorism. We're against the Islamic State. And so they see the U.S.'s reluctance as just baffling, as confusing. And at the same time, they are worried about these strikes that are being carried out on their sister organization. There have been numerous strikes by Turkey, both in the Turkish mountains and in the Iraqi mountains on PKK camps. And those camps are the very camps that the commanders of the YPG went to study and to train before becoming YPG commanders.
It's a fascinating story, and as you said, one that is a long way from being resolved. Rukmini Callimachi, who, as we said, just returned from inside Syria. Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure, Judy.